Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be looking at building a REST API using Django and the Django REST framework, okay? So you can see here, this is basically what we're going to be building. So you can see we have 3 posts currently in our database, and this is all stored in the Django SQLite database. And basically we're using the Django REST framework to serialize our data into JSON format, and then we can come to the front screen here. This is just the root directory of our app on localhost 8000. You can see we have our list of posts. You can see the framework, or it's actually authenticated as well. So we can't actually post anything to our API unless we're logged in as an authorized user. So we have the options to do that here. If I log in, say Conor, just do my password. And now you can see we have the option to post down here as well. Okay, so we can also interact with this if we go to a specific post. Say if I wanted to delete this third post here. So we got an ID of 6 on this. So if we go /6, you can see we get taken to our third post, and we have the option to delete or amend this. Okay, so I can delete that, and then if we go back to our root, you can see we only have the 2 posts remaining. We can also interact with this. So I'll go into Postman. We can obviously get the request details from the API here as well. See, we have our 2 posts there. We can also post to our API, so let's just do a post request. And again, so we deleted our third post, but if I add it again now, so we have our form data we're going to be sending to port 8000. We send that, you get returned the third post, and if we request this again, you can see our third post has been returned. Okay, so we also have suffixes we can search as well. So if we just do /7.json, we get the raw JSON returned. And we can just do that for the root directory as well. So we're going to be handling all this within our API. But yeah, I hope you get something out of this, guys. Enjoy it. I think in future I'm going to be building a React app where we're going to be rendering these kind of blog posts to our React app. But here's how you just get the REST API set up in Django and Django REST framework. So yeah, let's get going. Cheers, guys. Okay, guys, so to start, we first need to install the Django or dependencies. So we're going to be using the Django web framework here to build out our URL patterns and our database models. We're going to use the Django REST framework to build out our API endpoints on top of this. This will convert our models, our database models, into JSON format for our API. Before we get started though, let's just install the virtual environment. So we're going to use this official Python virtual environment, which is going to run this command in our terminal. So I've got my project folder open here, drftut, type in python3 -m, and then venv, and then I'm going to call this virtual environment venv as well. Press enter. And then you can see, if we do an ls, we can see our virtual environment folder there. So to activate, just type source venv /bin/activate. And you can see our virtual environment is activated because we have this venv in parentheses here. Okay, so now if we do a pip3 list, you can see all the dependencies installed. We currently only have pip and setup tools. We're going to be using pip to install Django and the Django REST framework. So pip3 install Django and Django REST framework. Spelled Django wrong. Put that in there. Okay, so they're installed now. So if we do a quick pip3 list, and you'll see we have Django and Django REST framework installed, version 3 for each one. So now, if we start a project with Django admin, start project, we're going to call this blog. Press enter. Do an ls, you'll see we have our blog folder there now. So if you open this with VS Code, just quit out of that, do a code dot. And now you can see we have our blog folder on the left column here with all our Django files. Our manage.py file will be used to run the server. Before we do this though, let's just head back into the terminal, and I'm just going to do an ls. We'll cd into this blog folder, and then we're going to do start a new app. Okay, so we're going to say python3 manage.py, and we're going to say start app, and we want to start our API. okay? And this will add the API folder into the left column you can see here with our usual Django files again. I'm just going to run the server quickly, just to make sure we're working. So Python 3 manage.py run server. Just ignore the migration warning for now, we'll deal with that later. We're going to copy this address here and paste that in our browser. Okay, and you can see we get the Django success template here, so that's working great. If you go back into our project now, let's go to, I think we'll start off in the URL, the main URLs file, okay? I don't want to go install that, let's go to the urls.py. Okay, and then in here, we're going to import include from this Django.urls module at the top. We're going to add a new pattern in our URL patterns for, we say path to our root directory. We're going to include api.urls, like so. Add the comma at the end. So what this will do, this will look in our API folder or the app we just made, and it'll be looking for a urls.py file, okay? So we're going to route to that urls file. So if we do that now, we'll go into our API folder, create a file called urls.py. And in here, we're going to copy over from our main urls file, just these lines here, paste them in. We can delete this admin line, we don't need that. We can remove the admin from the URL patterns as well. And then here we just want to import our views from this app folder, okay? So we can say from dot, referencing the whole entire folder, we want to import that views module, okay? Then in here, we're going to say views dot, we're going to say index. We're going to create a function view called index in our views file. So let's do that now. Say def index, and that takes in a HTTP request. We'll just say request there, and we're going to import the usual Django HTTP response. So from Django.http import HTTP response, and here we're just going to say return HTTP response, and we're going to say just the H1 for now, saying hello Conor. Close that off. Okay, let's test this out. So if we do terminal, we'll say let's cd into the blog. We'll do Python 3 manage.py run server. If we go now, refresh the page, you see we get a hello Conor there, so that's working. Okay, the next step here, close this terminal down, don't need that. So next we want to make our migrations, okay, so we'll say Python 3 manage.py migrate, and this will create all of our tables in our SQLite database. Next we want to do is create a super user, okay, to access our admin page. So Python 3 manage.py create super user. Just insert your details here. I'll go with Conor, put my email address in there, and then we'll also just do a generic password for now. I'll just use password. It says common, but just overwrite that with yes. So now, if we run our server, we should be able to log into our admin site now. So if we do /admin, just put my password in there. You can see we can now log into our administration admin site. Okay. So next, let's create our models. So we're going to say class post, and this is going to inherit from models.model. And then in here, we're going to just add our table columns, okay? So for a post, we want title, say title equals models.char field, max length of 100 letters. We'll leave it at that for now. And then underneath this, we'll say content equals models, and this is going to be .text field. And then we're going to say published, and this is going to be the date our post will be published, okay? So say models.datetime field here, and we're going to say auto and now add equals true. So that will populate it with the date when we save our post instance, okay? Then we're going to do a method under here called def dunder string, dunder, and then we'll do text in self. We're going to say return self.title. And under here, we're just going to do a class meta, with a capital M. And here we're going to say ordering, and that's going to equal a list with minus published. And what this will do, this will just list all of our posts in descending order from the date they was published. So the newest post will be listed at the top. Okay, so that's it for our post model. Next thing we want to do here is install our apps. So you can see here we need to install the REST framework in our settings. Okay, so if we go to our main settings.py file, we'll add that REST framework in our list of installed apps, and we'll also change this to include our API app, which we created as well. So api.apps. If we go to the app.py file in our API folder, you get the name of the app there, API config. So I'll just copy that into our settings at the end here as well. Like so, replace that, add the capital A, and that's it. Our app should now be installed. So now we should be okay to run some more migrations to migrate this post model. So what we'll do here, we'll say Python 3, make that lowercase, manage.py, make migrations. And this will create our SQL statements to inject the tables into our SQLite database. So now we can say Python 3, manage.py, migrate. And that will migrate our post model to our database. So now if we run server again, if I take you to the admin site, if we do a refresh, you can see our post model still doesn't appear. Okay, so we need to install this in our admin, or register it in our admin.py file underneath our blog, in our blog API folder. So say admin.sites.register post. We're going to need to import that post model into our admin.py file. So say from .models import post. So now that should be registered. So if we go back to our admin site and we refresh, you can see we have our posts registered there. Okay, so that's all working. There's no posts in there yet. But what I want to show you first is I want to add a post via the shell prompt. Okay, so let's do that now. Go into our terminal, go into the VS Code terminal, close down the server. Then we're going to say, we'll clear that out, we'll say Python 3 manage.py. We say shell in here. Okay, now what we need to do, if we go to our models, we just need to import this post model. So say from, and that should be, say from api.models, import that post class, okay? Then we're going to create a new post, so say post1 equals an instance of that post, and we'll say, give it a title of, I don't know, Connor's first post. Do a comma, and then we do content, and that's going to equal something like amazing first post content. Okay, so then we can close that down, and then we can access the parameters here by, if you say post1.title, you get Connor's first post, post1.content, you'll get the content in there as well. Let's save this to our database. We'll say post1.save, parentheses, and now this would have been added to our database. Now if we go back to our administration page, we need to run the server again. Let's exit out of this shell and then do Python 3 manage.py run server. Go back to the admin and under post, and you can see our post is there now as it's been added to the database. Okay, so that's all working. Okay, so next thing we want to do is create our serializers. Okay, so we're going to be using this model serializers class. So if I just copy this, this is from the Django REST framework documentation. We're going to create a new file underneath our blog folder called serializers.py. Okay, and if we go in here, we'll paste that in. And then if we do up here at the top, we say from .models import post, and then here we're going to say from REST framework import serializers, schema serializers. Okay, and then we're going to change this name to post serializer, capital P, and we'll leave, nope, should leave that how it is, sorry. And then coming under our meta class here, we're going to use our post model, so replace that snippet, and in the fields we want the ID, we want the title, and we want to replace this with content, and then we just want to add our publish state in there as well, post publish state. Okay, so that's it for our serializer. Now the next thing we want to do is create some views for this serializer. So we need to do some imports first. So we're just going to import that HTTP 404. Then from .models import our post model. And underneath this we're going to say from .serializers import post serializer. up in there. Just need to put a dot before that serializers. And then come underneath this, we also need to do a few REST framework imports. So from REST framework import, we're going to say status and permissions. And then coming under this, we're going to say from REST framework dot views import API view. And then under here, we'll say from REST framework dot import. And that should be dot response import response, like so. And then that's it for our imports for now. So let's create our views. We're going to use class-based views for this project. So come under here, we'll say class. And we're going to say post list. And that takes in self request. Actually, no, sorry. It shouldn't take in these. It's taking the API view we imported up at the top. So we'll just say API view in here. And then we're going to say do a comments. This is going to list all of our posts, or we can create a new post, okay, in this class view here. The first thing we're going to do is say def get to get all of our posts, and this takes in self request. And under here we're going to say, so first thing we're going to create or get all of our posts. So we'll say posts equals post.objects.all, okay, and this will fetch all the posts from our database. And then we're going to create our serializer. So we'll say serializer equals an instance of the post serializer we imported or we created earlier. And that's we're going to pass in our posts, and we're going to say many equals true, as we're going to be fetching multiple posts. And then here we're going to say return response, and this response is basically, if you see the documentation, we have this response object with request framework, okay? So we can basically just return a response with our serializer and the data, okay? So the JSON data. So say return response serializer.data, okay? So that's pretty much it now. So if we also just go back in, we'll create a new method for to create a new post, okay? So come under here, we're going to say def post. And this is going, again, to take in self and request. And then underneath here, we're going to say serializer equals post serializer data equals request.data, okay? So we can pass in, it's basically going to take the data from our post, okay? And then what we're going to do with this, we're going to say if the serializer is valid, okay? So it'll check the data in what we post and make sure it's valid. It's going to say if it is valid, we'll say serializer.save, and then we're going to return a response, and that response is going to be the serializer.data. So we'll return the data we just posted along with a status of, and here we're just going to say what do we call it, a 201 created, okay? So this is from the status import we added at the top here from REST framework. And if this isn't valid, we're going just to say return a response, and we'll just give this serializer.errors, and then we'll say status equals, and we'll just do a bad request here, status dot what's the number for that, 400 bad request. Okay, so next thing we want to do here, I believe that's it for our post list view. We just need to amend our URLs to import this this class-based view now. So we'll say views.postlist, and as it's a class-based view, we need to add this .asView method at the end. Okay. So now if we go to our server, you can see we get the JSON content of our first post content rendered there. Okay, in JSON format. So that's working. And we can also add this in Postman as well, or get this in Postman. So let's just open this up. Okay, so in Postman, we'll just click on this Add tab here, and we're going to add our port 8000 localhost. Just copy this over, paste this into Postman. You can see if we do this GET request, we can still return our JSON content here, so that all of our posts. We can also do a post request here, and then if we go into the body tab, do a form data, and here we can just add a key of title. We'll just say second post, and then we'll do content, and that's going to just equal super amazing second post content. We'll just do post whatever. So you can see that's been added now. It returns the actual second post data, and if we do a get request again, you can see it returns both posts in JSON format now, and it'll be the same if we refresh our REST framework in the browser as well. You can see the 2 posts there, so that's working brilliant. Okay, now that's done. Let's just go to our views again, and now we're going to create our views for individual posts. Okay, so if you want to get an individual post or edit or delete, so we'll say class post detail, and again that inherits from that API view we imported at the top. And here we're going to say, just add a comments, this is going to be for reading a post, updating or deleting individual posts. An individual post. Okay, so let's just do our first method, which is we need to actually get the post we're referring to. Okay, so we'll say define or get a function called get post. That's going to take in self, pk for primary key. Okay, and then in here we're going to say try. We're going to say return post dot objects dot get. We want to get the post where the primary key equals the primary key we pass in the address bar, okay? Or we'll say accept, and here we're just going to raise, we'll say raise HTTP 404 for not found, okay? Which we import at the top here. Okay, so that gets our instance or gets the post we're looking for as a method. Next we want to do is create a get method, so we'll say def get. That's going to take in self and request and also PK for the primary key again. So here we're going to say post equals, and we're going to use that method we just created, so self.getPost, and here we're going to pass in PK equals PK, oh no, just PK for now, sorry. And then we're going to, underneath this, we're going to create our serializer. So we'll say serializer equals post serializer. Post serializer, yep. And here we're going to just pass in that post. And that's it for now. And then coming underneath that, we're going to say return. We want to return response with that serializer. Do brackets, parentheses, serializer.data. Like so. Okay, so now coming underneath this, we're going to do our put request now. So we'll say def put. This is to edit our posts individually. So we'll say self, request, and again PK. And then coming under this, we're going to say post equals self.getPost again. It's that first method we created within this class. And again, we're just going to pass in PK. Then we're going to create our serializer again underneath this. So we'll say serializer. That's going to equal post.serializer. And here we pass in 2 arguments. So we're going to pass in first the post itself, and then we also want to pass in the request.data. Okay, so data equals request.data. So in effect, all this is doing is it's just replacing any updated inputs, any updated fields within our instance, okay? So that's what it's doing here under the hood in this update method. Okay, so that's how it basically works. It does a get, kind of a get request under the hood and replaces any updated fields. Now coming underneath this, we're just going to say if the serializer dot is valid, then we're going to say serializer.save again, serializer.save, and then we want to return the response, so we'll say return response, and then we'll just say serializer.data again, and then if that doesn't work, then we're just going to say return response, and here we just want to say serializer.errors, and then we'll give a status. that's going to equal status, static method status dot, and here we'll just give it a status with 204 no content. Okay, we'll just do that for now. Not no content, sorry. 400, bad request. Okay, and then coming out of this, we just want to do one more, the delete. So def delete, and here we're going to say self request and pk again. And then in this, we're just going to do, we'll get a post, we'll say post equals self.getPost, pk again. And underneath this, we're just going to say post.delete. And here we're just going to say return response. And we're going to say status equals status dot, and here we'll just do the no content. Like so, 204. Okay, so that should be pretty much it for our views now. Next thing we need to do is just add this to our URLs. Okay, so if we go to our URLs file now, and then here we'll just add a new path. Within this path, we're going to do an int to represent our primary key in our JSON data. So say int colon pk, and then this is going to point towards the post detail view we just created. Okay, we'll say .as view again. So now that should all be working. If we go back to our server, we should be able to just search by an individual post. So if we do /1, you can see we just get post 1 content. Same for 2. If we do 2 as well, we get our second post there. We can also delete a post now. So if we do delete here, yes, then you can see we get no content, that 204 response. Okay, and you can see it's been deleted there as well. Now let's try to, we'll do a put request now. Yeah, let's just, not found, sorry, yeah, it's not 2. We want to do it on /1 because we deleted our second post. So let's do a put request. We'll just replace the content and we'll replace it with, I don't know, updated post 1 content. Do send. And you can see we get the response for our updated post content. Now if we just do a get, let's change that to a get request. And you can see our post content's been updated there as well. So our put function's working, our delete function's working. Okay, so now that we've done this, let's just add some permissions to our API, okay? So in order to do that, let's go back into VS Code. You can see, if we go back to our views, you can see we imported this permissions at the top. Okay, so in order to add permissions, let's just go into our classes here. I'm going to add a line. We're going to say permissions, permission classes, sorry, equals, and that's going to be a list containing permissions dot, and here we're just going to say is authenticated or read only. Okay, I'm going to add this into our list post detail class as well, like so, underneath here. So basically this will allow us to only give us only read-only access if we're not logged in, okay? So we only have one authenticated user at the moment, which is myself, Conor. So for example, if we go to Postman, and if I do a get request, or a post request, sorry, I'm just going to try and post some content here. So let's just do send that. You can see here we get authentication credentials are not provided now, as we're not authenticated in Postman, okay? So I could just attach some authorization to this just to show it does work. So if we do just basic auth for now, where is it? Basic auth. I'll put my password in there, so that new password I created for my super user. If I do a send now, you can see as we're authenticated, we can now get this working in Postman, okay? Get request, that should work as it's read only. So we can see that post was added, that third post. So what else we want to add here? I just want to add some settings. So you'll see at the moment when we go to our API endpoints, we can't attach suffixes like .json at the end. So if we try that, for example, now, if I put .json in the address bar, so we say to.json, you see that's not working. So what we need to do is add this, add a line to our settings in our urls.py. So we're going to say here, underneath URL patterns, we'll say url.patterns equals, and before we do this, we just need to import from REST framework, import, and that should be REST framework.url patterns, import format suffix patterns. And come underneath here, we'll say URL patterns equals format suffix patterns, then we'll pass in that URL patterns list. So now, if we go .json, we just need to add the format keyword to our class-based views, okay? So if we go back to our views file, and then inside all of our methods within our class views, we just need to add this keyword format, okay? So if we go up to the get method first, we'll say format equals none, and then we'll do the same thing for the post request, format equals none. And this, remember, this is just to get the suffixes to work. So then we'll just say .format none in this get method as well. Do it in the, we don't really need to do it here, but I'll just do it anyway. And then delete. Okay, so now if we go back to our API in the browser, and if we just do .json there, you can see now, oh, that's not found. So if we just go change that to 1, you can see we get our post in pure JSON format now, okay? And we can do that for everything. So .json on the root directory, we get all of our posts there in pure JSON format. Okay, so now that's all working. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is just add an authorization login path to this API, okay? So if you just go to documentation, and then we'll go to authentication permissions here. There's a URL pattern we can add. So let me just find it quickly. This path here. So if you just add this to our URL patterns, so I'll copy that, and then if we go back into our VS Code, go to URLs, the main URLs.py, and then I'll just add this path at the end of our URL patterns, like so. And then if we go back into our browser, if we go back to the root directory of our API, you can see now we have the option to log out, okay? And you can see now when we refresh, we don't get the post anymore. If we log back in, we now have this option to post down here, okay? So we need to be authenticated. If we log out, you can see that's no longer there, that post option. Okay, so that wraps up this video, guys. That's just how you basically create a simple API with Django REST framework. I think in a future video, I'm going to show you how you can wire this to like a front-end framework like React, where we can display all our blog posts in the browser in a better format. But yeah, I hope you enjoy, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.